Welcome to Actum Sudan's podcast. I'm Richard Edwards.
And I'm Sarah Mutim, where we take you beyond the path of business and commerce.
And guide you through Sudanese books and insights into the history of Sudan.
Don't forget to comment, share, and subscribe to Actum Sudan.
We have a really significant discussion lined up today. We're focusing intensely on the latest from the High Committee for the General Environment to return citizens to Khartoum.
That's right. And specifically, we're diving into the report, well, the comments, really, delivered by Lieutenant General Ibrahim Jabber. He's a key figure member of the Sovereignty Council and, crucially, head of this committee.
And these comments were made pretty recently on Saturday, October 11th. So this is really fresh information we're working with.
Exactly. And the core of it, I mean, the big picture is about getting displaced citizens back home. But this report, it gets tactical. It lays out the government's actual concrete steps to restore services and security in the capital, Khartoum North, Omdurman, after the army's recapture.
Which is exactly why we wanted to break this down for you, our listeners. We've got this primary source material from Jabber's statement, and our goal today is really to walk through it piece by piece. We want to unpack the operational details, maybe some of the geopolitical ripples hidden within the official language.
It's about getting past the headlines, isn't it? Looking at the actual achievements, Jabber's claiming the number of water stations fixed, the percentage of electricity restored, how they're tackling infrastructure damage like bridges. These specifics, these data points.
The evidence. They're what supposedly backs up the claim that the capital is becoming safe and livable again, ready for people to return en masse.
Precisely. It's about seeing if the actions match the ambitions.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The foundation for all this is the High Committee itself, set up under Decision 153. Its purpose seems straightforward enough.
Singular, really. Prepare the general environment, that's the official term for displaced citizens and refugees, to return home to Khartoum state. But it's not just one task. Jabber structured the work around two core pillars.
Two pillars. Okay, what are they?
Well, the first pillar, and you could argue it's the absolute prerequisite, is security. Jabber presents this as the primary entry point.
Makes sense. Without safety, who's going to come back, right? No matter how good the services are.
Exactly. People won't leave, relative safety, even if it's basic, to go back to somewhere they perceive as volatile. So security has to come first.
So what does this security pillar actually mean on the ground? What are the concrete actions?
It's practical, institutional stuff, mainly. The report really emphasizes reopening police centers and the prosecutor's offices, the Niyabas.
Why is that so important? The institutional side, I mean.
Well, it signals the return to the rule of law, doesn't it? Reopening police stations brings back civil control, crime management moving beyond just military presence. And the prosecutor's offices, they're vital for judicial oversight, accountability.
So seeing those buildings open, staffed, it builds confidence.
Immensely. It tells people there's a functioning legal framework again. That's a powerful draw for returnees.
And beyond the buildings, there's physical control, too.
Yes, absolutely. Establishing checkpoints, securing crossings, the Maybar. It's about controlling movement, managing who's coming in and out. Particularly, Jabber mentioned managing a foreign presence and preventing security breaches. It's about securing the capital's perimeter.
Okay, checkpoints, police stations. But what about the bigger picture? The fighting forces.
Ah, yes. This was perhaps the most striking point Jabber made on security. The absolute necessity for the removal of all fighting forces from Khartoum state.
All of them, not just the opposition.
All of them. He explicitly included allied and supporting forces. This is significant. It's not just about winning the battle. It's about normalizing the security situation afterward. Meaning only official state organs police. The regular army should be responsible for internal security. Getting rid of multiple armed groups, even supposedly friendly ones operating in civilian zones. That's crucial for long-term stability. It cuts down the risk of future conflict or friction between groups.
Right. So achieving that removal, that transition from a mix of forces to just state control, that's the real hurdle for that initial security goal.
It seems to be presented that way. Until that happens, it's hard for people to feel genuinely safe enough for a permanent return.
Okay, so pillar one, security fundamental, institutional, involves clearing out all non-state forces. What's pillar two?
Pillar two is service provision. If security is the foundation, services are what make the house livable. This is about getting the capital functioning again.
And the priorities there, what did Jabber highlight?
The absolute essentials: water, electricity, health, education. But interestingly, he also specifically included getting Khartoum Airport back up and running.
The airport. Why is that group with basic services?
Because the committee understands that for Khartoum to be the capital, again, the economic, the political hub, it needs to be connected. Internally, yes, but also internationally. Reopening the airport is key to that. These services, together, they turn a secured area back into a place people can actually live and work. It attracts investment, supports the economy.
So the strategy is secure the ground, then bring back the services. How are they measuring success? Did Jabber offer any proof this is working?
He did. And significantly, he leaned on external validation. He cited United Nations reports from about a week before his statement.
And what did the UN reports say?
This is the headline figure: the return of over 2.5 million citizens to Khartoum state.
2.5 million. That's enormous.
It's a staggering number. You have to pause and think about that. That's the population of a major global city moving back. It implies a massive shift.
Is there any visual confirmation? Or is it just the UN number?
Jabber insisted it's backed up by what people can see: the return of heavy traffic, movement on all the roads into the capital. He argued this visible activity is proof positive that the security and initial service steps are having a real effect.
You don't get traffic jams unless people are actually there, right?
Pretty much. And he made another connection, too. He linked the widespread of services that have been restored and the restarting of factories as key factors encouraging these returns.
So it's like a feedback loop. Provide some water, some power, people come back. That creates demand and a workforce. So more factories open, more services expand.
That seems to be the dynamic they're counting on. Initial services encourage returns boost the economy and demand, which fuels further service restoration. It's a cycle they're trying to kickstart.
Okay, let's dig deeper into that second pillar then, the services. Starting with water, the report paints a pretty grim picture of the starting point.
Grim is an understatement. Jabber was explicit. Militias had systematically destroyed nearly all the Nile water stations supplying the capital, 14 of them.
14. How many were left working?
Just one, Al Manara station. That was it. So 13 stations providing drinking water for millions were deliberately knocked out. You can imagine the engineering nightmare.
Yet the report claims a very fast recovery. How fast?
Jabber stated that all 13 damaged stations were brought back into service. The timeline sounds incredibly rapid considering the damage described.
How did they manage that? What did the repair process involve?
It had to be phase. Phase 1 was pure emergency response, fixing pumps, motors, getting some water flowing using independent generators, just basic life support, really.
Generators. Okay, but that's temporary.
Exactly. Expensive, unreliable, hard to maintain at that scale. So they moved quickly, he said, to phase 2, connecting all strategic facilities, including those crucial water stations, back to the general electrical grid.
Connecting to the grid. That feels like a more significant step towards stability.
It absolutely is. Moving from scattered emergency power to the centralized grid that signals a shift from crisis management to building resilient infrastructure. It's a key indicator.
And the result of all this effort. What's the current water supply situation, according to Jabber?
The claim is remarkable. Water supply coverage across Khartoum state is now between 97 and 98%.
97 to 98%. That's almost complete coverage.
If that figure is accurate, yes. It would represent a massive victory in restoring the most basic human need. And critically, it's essential for controlling disease, especially with 2.5 million people returning. You need clean water.
Which pivots us perfectly to the next essential service. Healthcare. The public health risks in a situation like this must be immense.
They are huge. Waterborne diseases, sanitation issues, it's a major concern. The report did acknowledge the Ministry of Health's professionalism here. Apparently, they didn't just wait around.
What did they do?
During the initial conflict, they proactively set up reference hospitals in secure states outside Khartoum. This meant they kept their administrative structure and expertise intact, which likely allowed for a quicker operational return in the capital once areas were secured. Foresight, really.
Smart. So what's the tangible result in Khartoum now? How many hospitals are actually working?
The number given is 34. 34 public hospitals repaired and actively providing services. That's a significant number, indicating capacity for both emergency and ongoing care.
Public hospitals.
Yeah.
What about private ones?
Jabber mentioned the private sector hospitals are also gradually returning to service. That adds capacity, obviously, but those 34 state hospitals form the core of the public health response.
But hospitals need supplies. Medicines, equipment. We heard the central medical supply location was hit hard looting, destruction of warehouses, vehicles.
That's often the Achilles heel, isn't it? You can have the buildings and staff, but without the actual medicines and supplies, what can they do? This supply chain issue was clearly a massive problem.
So what's the progress there?
Jabber claimed significant progress. Over 70% of the effort to repair and restock the medical supply location is complete.
70%. That sounds substantial.
It suggests the system has moved beyond just emergency triage. It implies they can provide more sustained, comprehensive care now because the drugs and equipment are flowing again, at least to a large degree.
And on the preventative side, any specific public health successes mentioned?
Yes, specifically regarding seasonal fevers. Jabber noted a robust response and claimed the health curve for these fevers was rapidly approaching the zero infection point around the time he spoke.
Why are seasonal fevers significant here?
Because post-conflict situations, especially with displacement and potentially damaged sanitation, are breeding grounds for outbreaks, things like malaria, dengue, waterborne illnesses that often spike seasonally. Claiming rapid control suggests their surveillance, sanitation, and medical response systems are actually working effectively. It corroborates the claims about water and hospital functionality.
Okay, water, health. What about education? You mentioned that earlier.
Education is a powerful indicator, perhaps more social than purely infrastructural. Families make huge decisions psychologically, financially, when they decide to enroll their kids in school somewhere.
So what's the status of schools in Khartoum?
Jabber stated that all schools have been opened and rehabilitated. He also highlighted strong community participation in getting them ready.
Community participation.
It suggests a level of buy-in from the returning population. But the real clincher, the data point Jabber emphasized, was the large-scale return of teachers and Sudanese families from outside the country, specifically to enroll students for the current academic year.
People coming back from abroad just for the school year.
That's the claim. And if true, it's a massive vote of confidence. Families simply wouldn't bring their children back into a recently conflict-affected city unless they perceived real stability and a viable future there. It's stabilization measured in family commitment, you could say.
And finally, under services, the airport.
Yeah.
Khartoum Airport. Jabber said it's ready. What does ready actually mean here?
Ready seems to mean the basic physical infrastructure is sound, and immediate security protocols are in place. The runway's clear, the basic systems are functional.
So are they planning a grand reopening?
Interestingly, no. Jabber said no formal ceremony is needed. The plan is gradual normalization. Operations will start with internal domestic flights first.
Domestic first. Why?
It allows them to test everything: air traffic control, ground handling, security logistics in a slightly lower stakes environment before tackling the much greater complexities and security challenges of international flights. It's a phased, cautious approach to reopening that crucial economic link. All right, moving on from water and health to electricity. And if water was maybe a sprint to get basic flow restored, electricity, well, that sounds like the long, complex marathon.
Why is electricity so much harder?
The grid itself is just physically vast, interconnected, and incredibly vulnerable to damage. Restoring power across a whole capital region after conflict is arguably one of the most challenging infrastructure tasks there is.
Jabber reported daily progress, though.
Yeah.
New areas getting power constantly.
Yes, which suggests a very localized, almost block-by-block approach to restoration. They're not flipping one giant switch.
And the strategy is it's focused.
Still strategic nodes first. Hospitals, water stations, key public service points get priority. Then they expand outwards to residential areas. You need the core services powered before you light up homes.
Which means coverage would be uneven.
Absolutely.
Oh.
It creates a geographical patchwork of areas with power and areas still waiting.
So where has the restoration been most successful, according to the report?
Jabber highlighted specific areas. Omdurman, for instance, was described as almost entirely covered. That's significant.
Almost all of Omdurman.
Wow. And Khartoum North also showed excellent coverage, reaching up to the Shambat area. This might suggest the distribution networks in those perhaps slightly more peripheral areas suffered less catastrophic damage. Or maybe it was easier to isolate sections for repair.
And in the south, what's the picture there?
It seems systematic, kind of directional. Areas like Eid Babakir, parts of Haj Yusuf, Alfan, they're reported as connected. And importantly, the work is described as moving north from Alfan to cover the rest of Haj Yusuf, and also reaching Abu Adam in South Khartoum.
So it sounds like engineering teams are following closely behind secured areas, deliberately restoring power sector by sector.
That's the impression, yes. A methodical advance.
But then there's the big challenge, central Khartoum. The report indicates progress there is much slower.
Yes, that seems to be the major bottleneck. Jabber specifically mentioned immense damage to the critical, large conversion stations in the city center.
Conversion stations, what makes them so critical?
These are the big hubs. They take the high voltage power coming in on the main transmission lines and step it down to the lower voltages needed for distribution through local streets and into buildings. They're essential for powering dense, central urban areas.
And the damage is severe.
Apparently so. Jabber used the Farouk station as a prime example of massive destruction. We're not just talking about broken wires here. This means replacing huge, specialized equipment transformers, capacitors.
Which isn't exactly an off-the-shelf purchase, I imagine?
Not at all. These are massive components, often custom built for the station. Sourcing them internationally takes time, getting them transported, installed. It requires heavy lifting equipment, specialized engineers. It's a major undertaking.
So until those central stations like Farouk are rebuilt,
large parts of central Khartoum could remain dark, even if power is available elsewhere on the national grid. It can't get to the end users without those step-down stations.
Okay, so distribution within the center is tough. What about the main power lines coming into the city, the big transmission towers?
There, the news sounds better. Jabber reported that over 90% of the wire replacement on the major transmission towers is complete.
90%. That's quite high.
It suggests the engineering teams have made significant headway on repairing those main arteries of the grid, often in difficult conditions. There's still some ongoing work, specifically repairing towers on the line between Al Jazeera State and Khartoum in the Al Bagir area and beyond.
Why is that specific line important?
Because it connects Khartoum to other major power generation sources in the country. Repairing it ensures the capital isn't solely reliant on local generation, making the supply more robust.
Now, this leads to something that might surprise listeners. Jabber stated Sudan actually has an electrical energy surplus right now.
Yes, exceeding 600 megawatts, according to the report.
600 megawatts. Is that a lot?
It's a very significant amount, easily enough to power a large metropolitan area or substantial industrial activity.
So if there's a surplus, why are parts of Khartoum still dark?
It's latent capacity. The power is being generated elsewhere in Sudan, but the damaged network in Khartoum, especially those central conversion stations, can't currently absorb or distribute it. It shows the underlying strength of Sudan's national grid outside the main conflict zone.
So the potential is there, once those bottlenecks like Farouk Station are fixed.
That surplus power can be integrated almost immediately. It could lead to a rapid surge in availability once the infrastructure is ready, which would be a huge boost for economic recovery.
Okay, let's shift from power lines to lifelines, physical infrastructure, specifically bridges. Rebuilding them is critical for aid, for reconstruction materials, for just basic movement.
Absolutely. And this is where international cooperation comes into the picture, specifically with Egypt.
Egypt's role. How was that framed?
Jabber expressed very strong appreciation for Egypt's support, not just technically, but also for hosting, hundreds of thousands of Sudanese refugees. This diplomatic goodwill seems to have paved the way for practical help on the ground.
And the practical help was an Egyptian technical team assessing damaged bridges.
Yes. They were brought in to look at the key bridges.
Why Egypt specifically? Do they have unique expertise?
It's actually very practical. An Egyptian company was involved in the original design and construction of the Halfaya Bridge, and crucially, they still had the original blueprints and technical documentation.
Having the original plans.
Yeah.
That must speed things up enormously.
Hugely. In post-conflict reconstruction, finding or recreating original designs can take months, even years. Having them readily available is a massive advantage for assessment and repair planning.
Okay, let's look at the specifics. The Halfaya Bridge, the southern section, was hit hardest.
That's what the report indicates. Studies are underway for the full repair, but the immediate focus is on a quick intermediate fix.
An intermediate fix? How quick?
The target mentioned is 45 days. Within 45 days, they plan an intermediate repair specifically designed to increase the bridge's weight capacity.
Weight capacity. Why is that the focus?
Because the current capacity is reported at only 10 tons. That's very low. Think about it. A standard large truck carrying aid supplies or heavy construction materials like cement or steel beams can easily weigh 30 tons or more.
So a 10-ton limit basically stops heavy goods traffic.
Exactly. It paralyzes the logistics needed for reconstruction. This intermediate repair aims to raise the capacity up to 30 tons. That single change could unlock the flow of heavy materials needed for rebuilding efforts across the river, even before the full long-term restoration is done. It's a strategic, quick win.
Makes sense. What about the other major bridge mentioned, the Shambat Bridge?
Shambat seems slightly further behind Helfaya in the repair timeline. The critical planning stage is happening now. A full land survey of the damaged area has been done.
So they know the extent of the damage.
They have the physical data. Now, design studies for the reconstruction are being prepared, involving a Sudanese team alongside potentially the Egyptians or others. The next step mentioned is launching tenders for the actual reconstruction work.
Launching tenders.
Yeah.
So they're moving past assessment and getting ready to hire contractors to do the physical rebuilding?
Precisely. It signals they're ready to start the major reconstruction phase for Shambat, whereas Hofaya is getting that faster, capacity-boosting intermediate fix first.
Okay, so rebuilding within Khartoum is one major focus. But the government also has responsibilities beyond the capital, especially in areas still facing severe hardship. Jabber addressed this, didn't he?
He did. He specifically mentioned the dire situations in El Fasher, in North Darfur, and parts of South Kordofan, particularly around Kadugli.
And how did he frame the government's role there?
Very clearly, as a constitutional and legal duty. He stressed that aiding citizens in these areas isn't optional charity. It's a fundamental responsibility of the Sudanese state to protect its civilians and its borders.
So positioning aid delivery as a core function of sovereignty, even amid conflict.
Exactly. It frames the government as fulfilling its mandate across the whole country, not just where it has full military control.
And have they been able to deliver aid to these besieged areas?
Yes, the report confirmed relief operations have been undertaken, specifically airdrops of aid materials.
Airdrops? Where?
Previously in Kadugli, Dilling, and nearby areas in South Kordofan, and Jabber stated that airdrops were ongoing in El Fasher at the time of his statement.
Airdrops are complex, though, aren't they?
Very. Logistically difficult, expensive. But sometimes they're the only way to bypass conflict lines and get essential supplies directly to isolated populations who desperately need them.
This brings us to the broader issue of humanitarian access. How is aid supposed to get into and around Sudan officially? Did Jabber outline the approved routes?
He did. He laid out a specific network that the government has designated for structured aid delivery by international and domestic organizations.
Okay, what does that network include?
It includes 7 specific ground crossings and 6 operational airports. This is the officially sanctioned map for aid flow.
7 ground crossings. Can you list them?
The report mentioned 2 in North Sudan. Specific names weren't given in the summary we have. 2 crucial ones into South Sudan at Rank and Rubkona, which are major transit points. 1 crossing at Kosti, 1 at Tyne, and 1 at Adelbar.
Adelbar. But there was a note about that one. A reservation.
Yes, Jabber explicitly mentioned reservations regarding the Adelbar crossing.
What was the concern?
The implication was about maintaining the integrity of the aid. The worry, as Jabber framed it, is the potential for logistical support, things like fuel, food, maybe even vehicles disguised as aid to reach militia groups through that particular crossing.
So it highlights the difficulty of facilitating aid while preventing it from being diverted to fuel the conflict?
Precisely. It's a constant balancing act in conflict zones. Governments need to let humanitarian aid through, but also try to prevent resources from reaching non-state armed groups. This suggests Adelbar is seen as a higher risk point requiring extra scrutiny.
Okay, so 7 ground crossings, with the caveat on 1. What about the airports?
6 operational airports were listed: Port Sudan, Kassala, Dongola, El Obeid, El Fasher, and Kadugli.
That's an interesting mix. Some seem relatively secure, like Port Sudan. Others, El Fasher, Kadugli, are right in conflict hotspots.
Right. It reflects the need for different types of access. Secure hubs like Port Sudan act as main entry points for international aid. Maintaining functional airports in places like El Fasher and Kadugli is vital for supporting those airdrop operations we just discussed and for rotating essential humanitarian personnel in and out.
With all these routes, how is coordination handled? Is it just a free-for-all for aid groups?
No, definitely not. The protocol is strict. Jabber stated that all aid organizations must coordinate and communicate directly with the official Sudanese Humanitarian Aid Commission, or HAC.
So the government maintains oversight through HAC?
Yes. This mandate ensures the government can track aid flows, theoretically direct resources according to its own assessment of needs and priorities, and maintain a level of state control over external actors operating within the country.
Given all this structure, Jabber made quite a strong claim about access, didn't he?
He did. He asserted quite forcefully that currently there are no obstacles preventing food and relief materials from reaching any part of Sudan.
No obstacles.
Yeah.
What's the significance of stating it so absolutely?
It's a strategic communication point. By saying there are no obstacles from the government side, it effectively places the responsibility for any delivery failures or delays squarely onto the aid organizations themselves, their logistics, their coordination, their capacity.
So it's partly about managing the narrative,
Yeah.
countering any claims that the government is deliberately blocking aid.
That seems to be the clear implication. It's a way of saying, we've opened the doors, the routes are defined, the coordination body exists. If aid isn't getting somewhere, it's not because we're stopping it.
All right, we've covered security, services, infrastructure, aid. But all of this happens under the shadow of the ongoing conflict.
Yeah.
Which leads to the ultimate question. When will the war actually end? Did Jabber offer the government's perspective on this?
He did, and it was framed very much in terms of state integrity and constitutional duty.
How so?
He argued the conflict will cease only when the pillars of the state are firmly reestablished. It wasn't framed as a negotiation over terms, but as an existential fight to protect and restore state sovereignty.
So the war ends when the state is whole again, essentially.
That's the core message. The Sudanese armed forces, with popular support, he mentioned, are fulfilling their constitutional duty to protect sovereignty. Therefore, the military effort continues until that goal is achieved. The end condition is a functioning sovereign state across its territory.
That perspective must shape how they view international peace initiatives then. Sudan did participate early on in the Jeddah platform back in May 2023.
Yes, they signed the Jeddah Principles Framework. But Jabber was quite blunt. He stated that the implementation of those principles failed.
Failed. Why? What was the government's view on the failure?
The implication was a lack of adherence by the opposing forces to the agreed terms, things like humanitarian access, cessation of hostilities. This perceived failure seems to have motivated the government to become much more assertive in defining its own path to peace, rather than relying solely on external mediation frameworks.
And Jabber was critical of having too many peace efforts running at once. He mentioned the Quad mechanism, for example.
Yes, he critiqued the multiplicity of platforms. His point seemed to be that having numerous groups involved, the UN, the AU, the Quad, various individual nations all trying to mediate simultaneously, can actually hinder progress.
How would it hinder progress?
It can create confusion, dilute the focus. Different mediators might have different priorities or approaches. It can also, frankly, allow conflict parties to forum shop, playing one mediator off against another to avoid concessions. Jabber argued this proliferation of initiatives complicates things and gets in the way of a resolution. He seemed to be calling for a more unified approach, ideally one led by Sudan's own defined interests.
Which led them to create their own roadmap.
Exactly. Jabber confirmed that Sudan developed and submitted its own clear, written peace roadmap to the UN and all relevant regional and international organizations back in February.
A Sudanese-defined roadmap. What's the basis for it?
Jabber insisted it's explicitly based on the aspirations of the Sudanese people. And its primary focus, he stressed, is securing the state, preserving national sovereignty, and restoring the authority of the legitimate government.
So it prioritizes state integrity above, say, an immediate ceasefire that might leave governance structures ambiguous.
That appears to be the strategic choice, yes. It aims to prevent externally driven proposals that might push for a quick halt to fighting without, in their view, adequately addressing the fundamental issues of state control and sovereignty.
And this roadmap now comes with a condition for anyone wanting to help.
A very clear condition. Jabber stated unequivocally, any nation or organization wishing to assist Sudan must commit to adhering to the specific points laid out in this official Sudanese-authored roadmap.
That's a strong stance. It basically says, help is welcome, but only on our terms.
It's a powerful assertion of national agency, yes. It dictates that international involvement, whether it's aid, mediation, reconstruction support, must align with Khartoum's stated priorities, not the potentially different priorities of external actors.
And who gets the final say?
Jabber was emphatic on this. The Sudanese people, as the primary affected party, hold the final decision regarding any future peace process or agreement concerning their destiny. It's an attempt to firmly reject any perception of externally imposed solutions.
So the message to the international community is, support our plan, don't try to impose your own.
That seems to be the essence of it. It reframes international engagement as a support mechanism for a Sudanese-led solution rather than an independent mediation effort dictating terms. It clearly prioritizes reinforcement of the existing state structure as the pathway to stability. So, wrapping up our look at Lieutenant General Jabber's update. The overall picture he painted is one of, well, dramatic and systematic recovery efforts underway in Khartoum. It's driven by some really intensive infrastructure repair work.
Yeah, the scale is striking. When you hear about restoring 13 out of 14 water stations from near total destruction, repairing 34 public hospitals, getting the medical supply chain over 70% functional again, these are the concrete details that lend credibility to the UN's finding of 2.5 million people returning.
And it's not just the big numbers, it's the targeted fixes, too. That planned 45-day repair for the Halfaya Bridge, just to boost the weight capacity from 10 tons up to 30 tons. That specific action shows a real focus on unlocking the heavy logistics needed for wider reconstruction. It's practical.
Plus that revelation about the 600-megawatt electricity surplus nationally. It highlights the potential. The power is there, waiting for the grid repairs, especially in central Khartoum, like the Farouk station, to be completed so it can actually flow.
But beyond the operational details, we end on that significant political stance Jabber laid out. The insistence that any international support must adhere strictly to Sudan's own self-defined roadmap for peace and sovereignty.
Which leaves us with a really interesting tension, doesn't it? A final thought, perhaps, for you, our listeners, to consider.
Right. How does the strong assertion of national ownership, this demand for adherence to a specific Sudanese plan, how does that balance against the undeniable urgency felt internationally to just stop the fighting, often through more fragmented or externally driven mediation efforts?
That tension between Sudan's insistence on its sovereign path and the international community's push for immediate peace that really seems to define the complex diplomatic road ahead for Sudan.
Indeed, it's a critical dynamic to watch.
Thank you for joining us for this discussion on Actum Sudan.
Please do comment, share this with others who might find it useful, and subscribe for future updates.
We appreciate you listening.